Do you ever find yourself talking to yourself? I know I do. And sometimes you wonder, is that normal that I'm talking to myself? Or even having an argument with yourself. A part of you is having an argument with another part of you. And is that normal? Well, maybe it is. What we're going to talk about today is internal family systems therapy model. So I'm not offering therapy. This isn't about giving you therapy. It is really just information to understand how some therapies work. And I find that when I understand therapy, it makes me less anxious about going to therapy. It makes me understand it a little bit better. And also just understanding how certain models of therapy work helps me to understand myself better. So I hope you enjoy this. It's really interesting. Internal family systems therapy was created by Dr. Richard Schwartz, who has a PhD in marriage and family therapy. He developed IFS, internal family systems therapy, years ago while working with kids who were experiencing eating disorders. Sometimes they would talk about their part. They had a part of them that was an inner critic that would attack them inside and leave them feeling worthless. This part felt empty and alone, and it felt so dreadful and scary. Their dysfunctional pattern of eating or starving or binging would sometimes somehow make them feel better for at least a little while. But then the critic would come back and call them names for binging. So a cycle would develop. They felt bad. They had that inner critic. They would eat or starve, and then that inner critic would start harassing them for binging or for not eating. Dr. Schwartz realized he also had the same kinds of voices inside himself that would criticize him. So at first he thought that inside all of us, we must all have some kind of internal parent that's always, nitpicking and judging us. And we kind of just always hear that in our head. And when his patients told him that they were hearing this internal critic, Dr. Schwartz said, well, just go home and stand up to the voice. But the kids would come back and say that when they stood up to their inner critic, it would get worse. So Dr. Schwartz said, do it more, basically be stronger than your own mean inner critic. But instead of feeling better and stronger, his young patients were getting worse. At first, Dr. Schwartz said, this is kind of a dangerous game. I don't know if I want to get involved in this. It wasn't working. But one day he said to one of his patients, let's hear from this inner critic that keeps telling you these things that make you feel bad about yourself. What is it saying? So he and his patient respectfully asked the inner part of the patient's, critic or part to step forward and say what was going on. What he heard was that his patient had trauma in her past that was very painful. And she would shut down her body so that she couldn't feel things in it. Now that she's older, a part of her had contained that fear and anger about how she'd been treated. And that part really needed to find some way to express itself. This part wasn't separate from his patient, it was part of her, but one that the patient's larger self, so that's self with a capital S, she had a larger self that didn't want to necessarily acknowledge or express that part of herself because it was hard to do. Maybe it made her feel bad, or she wasn't sure who that was, or maybe it brought up memories. So she suppressed that part of herself. But that part of herself was something that she created to adapt when she was a child to a very painful situation that she was just too young to deal with at the time. So that part of her was actually there to try to protect her. The problem was that part wasn't living in the present moment. It wasn't in today. It was stuck back in the abuse and the feeling that the world was a dangerous place, even though for her as a grown or older child, it wasn't as dangerous anymore. But that part of her was stuck in her childhood. So Dr. Schwartz realized that maybe this part and all of the parts that are in us are like children in a family that have been forced into certain roles that they maybe don't even like, but they do it to protect the system overall. So maybe there's a part that's really sad and expresses itself by being sad in situations that other people maybe are like, why are you crying in this situation? Or really angry and get triggered by things that are just like other people like, why does that trigger you? So we come to this family part of the internal family systems, which means if you're in a family and you have a younger kid who's acting out, you can't just say stop doing that. I mean, anyone who knows little kids will tell you that that kid is going to try to find some way to express himself at some point. So you have to understand the network of relationships of all these different parts that we have inside ourselves, the sad little girl, the angry young boy, whatever it is, and integrate them together. First, by recognizing that they were there and created or got stuck. Part of us got stuck in that time and presented these behaviors that we don't sometimes understand, or these arguments or these criticisms that we have inside of us, because they're trying to protect us from getting hurt again. And when we talk to them, we get the opportunity to understand them and then to integrate them back into this larger self, big S, right? So what are the ways that you might talk to your inner critic? Well, or their inner part that you don't understand. So you might just get calm and quiet, and then you want to apply what's called the 8 C's of self-leadership. They are curiosity, being curious. Hey, what am I feeling right now? What's coming up? What is this part that's coming up in me? And you do it in a calm way. So that's the next C, calm. You want to do some breathing exercises. You want to make sure you're in an environment that feels really safe for you. Clarity. You want to be really clear about what's happening. Confidence, knowing that there's a larger self and everything's okay, and you can have these experiences and you can allow that other part to express what it is. Compassion for yourself, that maybe you went through something that created this situation where you have a part of yourself that needs some healing. Creative, understanding, allowing yourself to be open to, hey, I've got this part of me that just wants to color and needs to be hugged more and really wants to be understood. And sometimes it comes out in adult situations where maybe it's inappropriate, but I'm going to find creative ways to express that part so it's not coming out at work or it's not coming out at school, for example. Courageous, allowing yourself to have some courage, that it's okay to look into yourself and some of those things, only if you're in a safe environment. And again, these are things that you can do in therapy where you feel like this is a safe place and you've got someone to help guide you, particularly if you're nervous and you feel like you need a lot of courage to do this. And then connected in a way that wants you to connect to those parts of yourself and to get those parts integrated, not only to your larger self, but in ways that help you connect with other people. So next time you find yourself talking to yourself, maybe arguing with yourself, or just wondering, why is it that there's a part of me that wants to go to this party and is really excited, and another part of me that's saying, I just want to stay home and not talk to anybody, and I'm just not sure why I have these two parts in me? Step back and ask those parts, what's going on here? And let them, with curiosity, calmly, clarity, confidence, compassion, creativity, courage, and connection, stand back and see what they might say. Now, one thing that people might think of is the idea of multiple personalities. And those are different things than what we're talking about. Someone who has multiple personalities or schizophrenia are going to have other indications that there is something that's dysfunctional happening. Maybe because if you have schizophrenia, perhaps you are speaking to someone who isn't there, but you think they're there. They're outside of you. Or there might be multiple personality situations, which is where the idea of parts has gotten really dysregulated. And the sense of a larger self, the capital S self, the kind of self that's calm and, there and perfectly made the way they are and fully accepted is not clear yet. So those, absolutely, you should be reaching out for help from a therapist, and talk to an adult, talk to someone you trust, and let them know that those things are happening so that you can get the help you need. If you don't have someone that you feel like you can talk to, or you want to just keep this to yourself and just reach out, you want to call 988. That's a number that is a crisis line where you can talk to someone where they can connect you to therapy. There's always someone there. It's 24/7 every day of the year. And that's a really good place to start to reach out if you're experiencing those kinds of feelings. I hope this helped. And if you keep watching bbgtv.org, we will have a lot more about parts and a lot more explanation about what it means from some experts in the field.